Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast, the go-to place to gain financial freedom through real estate investing. Here we interview investors, mentors, and entrepreneurs who share their secrets and advice to help you build passive income. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. Have you been considering getting into multifamily but not sure how? The quality of your coaching determines the future of your business. Avoid expensive mistakes, stop procrastinating, and buy a profitable building with my exclusive one-on-one coaching program. I have a few seats available now. To learn more, visit bulletproofcashflow.com/multifamily coaching. Again, bulletproofcashflow.com/multifamily coaching. When it comes to improving efficiencies in your real estate business, the ability to build new systems as well as streamlining existing ones is absolutely key. Putting together efficient systems within your real estate organization is important to profitability and expansion. Well, today's guest began working in real estate in 2001 within a tax lien foreclosure arena. He learned to grind it out, researching public records, understanding the legal side of real estate, and it gave him an advantage to handle these tax lien foreclosures. From there, he immersed himself into the business, learning private financing, deal partnering, enforcing appreciation, all while building systems around these processes with the end goal of building his own real estate business. Well, since then, he and his team have completed over 2,000 real estate transactions in the single family and multifamily space. Today, he serves as a managing partner at Bakerson, a group that runs an investment fund and real estate syndication projects. With all that, I'd like to welcome Bruce Wuollet to the show. Hey, Bruce, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here.
Yeah. So before we go on, if you like what Bruce has to say, check out his website at bakerson.com. If you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. Okay, Bruce, go ahead and tell the listeners about how you got your start in real estate.
Well, I had a business that actually didn't go well and ended up closing the doors in a drug education business and needed something to do. And I found a friend of mine in Phoenix, became my mentor in real estate. And I was a minority partner with him chasing tax lien foreclosures. And when we were doing that, I realized that, man, there's a lot of money being left on the table. His system was to buy only the tax liens, go through the foreclosure process, and get the properties or have them redeemed. And there was times where we could offer people $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 on top of the tax liens for the house and get them for pennies on the dollar, and he wasn't interested. So the ones that he passed on, I started making offers on those and picked up some properties that way. And during that, I had actually read Rich Dad Poor Dad and found that, hey, there's a future in real estate. And that's where I found my passion and started.
Interesting stuff. Wow. And it's funny, so many people that come on the show here, they become accidental real estate investors, right? And you're no exception. That's great. So now from there, you started moving into the single family space. Is that how you ended up getting exposed to that?
Yeah, I got really good at door knocking, talking to people about their tax situation, and it's really uncomfortable for people to admit that they had a problem. And I got pretty good at asking those questions and going door to door. And then I had a few houses, a triplex, a duplex, all in Phoenix. And I had two partners. We were all part-time. And in that part, I was still doing the tax lien foreclosures. And I wanted to go full-time in real estate, and they did not. They had their other businesses. They were doing well. And I ran into a guy named Jack Martin, and he says, hey, we should partner up. And he ended up doing some work for us on some of our properties and said, hey, I'd like to partner with you, see where this can take us. So then we dove in full-time October 2002, and we needed to come up with a name for our company. And I was driving south down Highway 51 in Phoenix, and it just popped in my head, Bakerson. I grew up in the bakery business in Minneapolis, the Wuollet Bakeries. Wuollet Bakery is still in business to this day, and it's been around 75 years or more, 75, I think. And I grew up in that business, and then Jack Martin's father also worked, and he was also a baker and worked for my grandfather at the Wuollet Bakery. So there was that connection. So we named it Bakerson in honor of our fathers. And since then, Jack and I have went different ways, but we're still very good friends. We talk on a regular basis. And I'm very thankful that we had friendship before the business, ran our business together for 16 years, went a different direction, and we're still good friends. So very fortunate, over 14 years in business with him, partnership, and parted on good terms. So what happened then, when I got into finding deals, I could find more properties that we could possibly fix or sell. And I was introduced to a guy by the name of Jim Staples out of Texas, out of Fort Worth area, or Arlington, as he says. So he taught me wholesaling, And the next year, we wholesaled 40-something properties to one buyer. Over 50 properties, but 47 to one buyer. And we said, hey, this is really great. And we really ramped it up. And I created a system of finding properties through door knocking, tax liens, deficiencies, neighborhood services, just driving the neighborhood and seeing a distressed property, pre-foreclosures, and then in the foreclosure market, then the auction. And any way we could, we created systems around that hot market. And we're able to do, the biggest year was 287 homes in 2012. And that was an amazing year for flipping. We were slow to get on the technology side of it, and that ended up changing the way people buy properties. So I ended up not staying in flipping houses because I didn't want to put up in all the technology infrastructure that was required at the time. We were really into the door knocking and the little yellow notes and getting to know people and face to face, and not so much the online buying. But what happened was when we flipping these houses, we find a mobile home park, a hotel, vacant land. We did a bunch of vacant land. And we found out that, hey, there's more property than houses, obviously. And we flipped probably 25 or so multifamily. And one day I said, we could do this ourselves. We could buy, fix, and sell these. And so that's what we got into about 5.5 years ago, doing multifamily. We've done 800 units in Phoenix and Tucson in multifamily. And now, as we're growing up, as you can see, we're moving towards the hold. And we want to hold through the next cycle, maybe even longer, but get that passive income going as opposed to the income being from always needing to sell to make money, that we can make money on the buy, make money on the repairs, make money on the management, and then if and when we sell in the future, make some capital then as well as cash flow. So trying to get multiple streams of income off of one business, if you will, being a multifamily property. And then the investors that come along with us also do pretty well. We serve them very well.
Excellent. Well, before we go on to all the other great stuff, I have a question about your partner. Finding a partner is absolutely critical, right? In this business, the way I see it, that is the only way to really grow and expand. No one ever does all this stuff themselves. They just don't. When you and your partner got together and started up that at the very first beginning, how did you identify that partner? How did you know he was going to be the stand-up guy that he ended up becoming, or that the partner ended up becoming, and building and forging that relationship, or even to this very day? I mean, I know you're not partners today, but you're still talking to him. That's more than what most people can say about some partners that they have. How did you identify that this was a good person to partner with?
Just the same core values of family, focus on the family. That for me is faith, family, work. And it's in that order. Personal faith is most important, family is next, and then work. And work supports those other things. The better you do at work, the more you can support your family, the more you can support your organizations of your faith. So that being said, the focus is on doing the right things right. And we are very close on that. And even when we had disagreements, people say, well, how'd you get through those? I said, well, forgiveness goes a long ways. We forgave each other often for our shortcomings, knowing that we are people. Everybody makes mistakes. And we had never hold a grudge, always go to bed each day. If we had a rough day, and before the end of the day, we'd talk to each other and say, let's get this out on the table. Let's figure out what's going wrong, what's going right. And kind of, as you could say, take care of issues between us and never go to bed angry. And I think that's the same thing you do with a spouse. You take care of each other and you treat each other with respect. At the end of the day, make sure that you're on the same page regarding the issues that came about during that day. And so that has been probably the number one thing. Now, we have struggled over time finding other partners. There's people that end up being more analytical or more emotional, or they're not quite in balance on a core values. Not that they're bad people, just they have different vision, different direction, and they want to take the business somewhere. Like you start out, you're like this. We're at the same spot, and I got if it's audio, you won't be able to see, but your hands are together. And as time goes, your hands get further and further apart, and all of a sudden you're looking across this canyon saying, what happened to my partner? We used to be on the same page, and now we're not, because our vision was slightly different. So having that shared vision during the time of growth was paramount. If your vision is not clear and not shared, you're going to have struggles. Even good people will have struggles and end up having disagreements. And it has nothing to do with the character of the person, but just the same core values and focus. And that's my answer for how we. But number one thing is just don't hold grudges if you have issues that come before you, make sure you go up to the person and just apologize if an apology is due, or ask them to apologize if it's due the other way, and just have an open relationship that way. To me, that it's pretty simple.
Absolutely. Trying to find that right partner is so key. And again, I've had other people on the show as well, and they've said that when they tried to grow their business and they did it with the wrong partner, it really hindered how fast they can scale and grow. And absolutely try to find that one right from the onset is paramount. But like you said, though, too, it's if you're able to identify the issue, share it with your partner, either come to terms or maybe just part ways, one of the two things, but try to stay away from building up that resentment. If you build up that resentment, it's not good for anybody. It's not good for the business, not good for the investors, not good for anybody.
Yeah, like I said, we're still good. Jack and I are still we're best friends. We still share information. We share resources. We're in contact. He's pursuing mobile home parks. It's a very slow, competitive growth cycle, very patient cycle. I'm more in I had a harder transition from the deal junkie to the buy and fix and sell to the buy and hold. It's taken me a lot longer to get to that point. I prefer the apartment living where you can have influence on the community and really take care of the permanent resident, those who may never own a home, would like to live in one. And my passion is at that level. Jack had different passions. He cared about those people. That's no question, but his passions went a different direction. And that's where we said, hey, we got a slightly different vision on the future. While things are good, let's just go different ways and remain friends. And it's worked out very well. But also there's partnerships that we have on deal partners on a per project. And that's been fun to look for that partner, but there's very few. You talk to a lot of people before you realize, hey, these people have a matched vision. Sometimes they reject us, sometimes we reject them. So we're forming one now on a project in Texas, our first outside of Arizona project, boots on the ground in the Houston area. So we want to partner with the right people. And it's been a few years in the making getting this partnership going. But for that reason, like you said, to make sure that we share the same core values up front, identify who's responsible for what, and if it doesn't happen, how do we take care of that? Those things that are not done right or not done, how do we protect each other? How do we protect ourselves? And how do we protect our investors?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So fast forwarding back to what you're saying before about your multifamily. So you mentioned you have 800 units in Tucson, right?
No, that's how many we have lifetime. Right now we have 256 single family and 20 condos in Tucson with a 90 unit building in contract.
Okay, good. Is that the one that you're raising money for right now?
We're still in the due diligence, so we haven't raised capital for that one yet, but we have a 75 unit, which we are raising capital for our final tranche. We've stabilized the asset, and now we're going to go for and I can get more detail, but yeah, that's two different projects.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about that one then. So where's that property at and how'd you find it?
That's Pueblo Springs. That's in Tucson on Alvernon near Speedway. And that was one that my son had gotten in contact with the owner and talked to him. And he had one property in Tucson and other properties in Sierra Vista. And he loved the property. Things are going great. And he asked, so then, over months of discussion, just periodically reaching out to him, asked how things are going. And the owner said, he's getting tired of the drive back and forth. It's getting inefficient for him, and he's ready to sell. So then we bought direct from owner, no brokers involved in that one. And it was a good purchase. And typically we've gone through and done all the repairs first and then the stabilization and fast track that. But for this one, we wanted to maintain the cash flow. So we worked on the stabilization first, and then we're going to work on the next phase will be exterior paint, updating some of the landscaping, and then a new parking lot, new gates, things like that. So that'll look aesthetically pleasing from the street.
Excellent. But you currently own the asset now, right? You just said
Right.
you're raising the last tranche, right?
Yes, we've had it for a year.
Okay. How did you identify that as a good asset? Like, why was your son calling on the seller? Well, it ended up being the seller anyway. What was the primary driver? Was it an economic thing? Was it because of where it was located? Is there new construction around there? Like, what was the reasoning behind it?
Well, when we first identified it, you could see there was some things that were kind of mildly neglected. Looked tired. There was a burn unit that you could see where they had repaired it, but the side of the wall was still black. They hadn't repainted it. The ceiling over the overhang was still black. They hadn't sealed that off. And that went on for a few months. We drive by and you'd see that, hey, nothing's changed on that. And the interiors they remodeled, they were beautiful. What the interior remodels they did were really, really nice for a workforce Class C property. It was up to B quality, but yet the exterior was still left alone and nothing really changed. So as that went on, you see, well, why are they not updating the outside? Why have they not painted the spot that has smoke damage? And what else is the issue? And then when you're talking to these owners, they always have a pain point. This one here was, after a while, you realize he had one asset in Tucson, the rest were in Sierra Vista and closer to home. He lives south of Sierra Vista, right on the Mexican border. And it was quite a drive all the time. And so every time he would drive, he must have been thinking, this is getting tiring. I'm not as interested in this as I used to be. And you could see it happening at the level, but it was a decently managed property and the rents were low. So we could sense that the rents needed to be bumped.
Right. And so it really came down to understanding and noticing what's going on in the neighborhood around you and looking for those opportunities, right? So in this case, a neglected property, and maybe it was some overgrowth of grass, maybe it's bushes that are unkept. It could be a variety of different things, but keeping your eyes out for an asset that needs a little help is one great way of trying to find an asset. And that sounds like a super buy right there. That sounds really good. So when you said the rents were low, how low was it compared to market?
Probably about $75 per unit under market at the time.
Wow.
And so it was considerable. But the updated units weren't pushing rents to market. They were still under market on the updated units. And so they should have pushed those to market.
Yeah. And so the property management company that was managing it, who's managing it now?
We're using Fort Lowell Property Management, a third party. We did have self-managed for a while, but we decided that, our expertise is finding and repositioning the property and managing it. There's third-party property managers that's all they do.
Yeah.
So we've adopted a philosophy here that do what we do best and outsource the rest. And so we're big on outsourcing construction and also on property management. But the high-level leadership, we still, my asset manager, Greg, will manage those assets. And then Nate is our project manager within our company, and he'll oversee the property level. But it's important that you identify what you're good at and what you should outsource. And we said, hey, we're going to set up a property management company, managed 3 properties, sold 1, had 2 of them, didn't go well, and decided, let's put that on pause. Unless we have another champion that's willing to run that division, let's just hire that out, outsource it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a big believer in sticking to your core competency. Our group is really good at acquisitions. We're really good at lining up the financing and managing the property manager. That's about it. We're not really big into doing heavy duty property management. Part of it is it'd be unfair to the tenant if we were trying to take it on and trying to do everything else at the same time. That tenant won't get the attention that they deserve to, well, number one, to keep them there because we're trying to reduce turns, but we also want to make the tenant welcome to be there, right? Make them feel welcome that they're there. So if you're trying to spread yourself too thin, like you said, it's just not going to work out. It's just not going to work out.
Yeah, we had heard a lot at these conferences that vertical integration, the more controls you have in place, the better you can do. And there's probably some truth to that, as long as you have champions within your organization that can run those. And we found out that 2 people in the company were getting stressed way too hard to oversee that. We thought, there's a few good property managers out there. Let's go with them. So we used 2 different property managers in Tucson for our 3 buildings. Depending on the asset, depending on the type of resident that's there, is where we go with the property management, because they have certain gifts or certain skill sets that are strong that we've tapped into.
That's right. Now tell us a little bit about the financing on that deal. So how'd you finance that one?
Well, due to the expenses being pretty much out of control on that, we had to go hard money, and it was probably around 9%. And we're still at a just over 7% money now. We're not going for permanent financing because we ran it down to about 65% occupied before we updated the units. We got rid of some problematic tenants. The residents that were causing problems, we had to get rid of them. And now we're at right at 90% or 87%. And so we're pushing 90 for 90. And by the end of the year, we'll pursue Fannie or Freddie money for the buy and hold. But just a little bit light on the finances right now to do that. And we'd also like to get the repairs done prior to that, so that it, because the parking lot, it's like sand. The gravel is so pulverized that it's got to get redone. Agency will require that to get done, so we'll just do it up front.
Absolutely. From what I'm hearing too, at least as of today anyway, in September of 2019, agency money is a little bit tougher to get your hands on these days, only because of what's gone on in the market. There are really commercial lenders that'll meet their rates with even better terms. So definitely something to check out.
Yeah, life insurance money is the other one we've got some really good quotes on. They're really particular about the property, so we want to make sure the property's at peak performance and it's got all the deferred maintenance is done, and it's a very stable asset to get the best financing available, and also be able to take out as many of the investors that would like to not stay in the long run. So we're about probably 6 to 9 months out on that, I think.
Yeah. Well, like you said too, it's got to be greater than 90% in order to be considered stable. So it sounds like you're almost there, which is great. That's
Yes,
super.
and it was intentional that doing it the way we did it was intentional to drive the occupancy down. You get the stabilization. So we've been over 80% for some time, but we're just very particular who we're bringing in, and then updating those units that are vacant to bring them up to market.
Are you doing any rebranding strategy as well? Did you rebrand and do all that?
Not on this one. It depends on the asset. Sometimes we have rebranded it. This one here had a pretty good name. In some circles, it had some problems, but now we've been able to use that to our advantage. That even the police department says, "Hey, you guys have done great things there. That we're really impressed what you did in a very short time." So we're getting some good vibes out there in the marketplace.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, yeah, we just did the same thing for a 126 unit deal out here just outside of Cleveland, where we took over this property. When we bought it, it was over 90%. And by the time we took it over, it was below 75. And we had to basically do the same sort of thing, get rid of some of the problem tenants. And we're cranking it all the way back up. And we just finished rebranding, and we're very excited about what's going to happen to this deal when it's finally wrapped up. It's going to be a great one. It's going to be awesome.
We did something like that, a little more drastic. We bought a property that was 50% vacant when at purchase. We brought it down to 74 units. We brought it down to 17 occupied, and it was really a problem. There was we dumped in probably $750,000. About $300 was the chiller system. It's a master meter system, but we brought it down to 17 occupied units, and then ramped it back up, and now we're at right at 90. But that one there it had a really bad name in the market, so we named it. It's 74 units on Stone across from Amphitheater High School. So we named it 7-4, the number 7, the word 4 on Stone, kind of trendy name for it, and rebranded it, painted it gray and orange, kind of modern colors. Redid the parking lot this year. Now we're working on the fencing next. So that rebranding, like you mentioned, that rebranding, sometimes it pays and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, we wanted to make sure that we rebranded it because it was run by a slumlord, and it was controlled by the local gangs and drug dealers and prostitutes. So it was really bad.
Yeah. And just like I said, that rebranding strategy it also lets the neighborhood know there's a new sheriff in town. And it also tends, in some cases, to drive some of those bad guys away, and then hopefully bring in a whole new element to the whole area. I mean, it could do some really cool, good things just doing a rebranding. It could be phenomenal.
Yeah, and I adopted a philosophy from some people that we met out of Dallas that he says, hey, if you clean up the trash, the rats will leave. And if you clean up the problem, they do tend to leave. They want to be under the radar, right? They don't want to be known in an area. They like to be quiet. They like to control it. Once they lose that control, they don't fight. They left. We didn't have any fighting, no issues with them, and they moved on. So you're right. So I like that philosophy. Clean up the trash and the rats will leave. The problematic residents are gone.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So in this deal, then, this last tranche you're trying to raise, I know that you're able to share some of the information because of the way you structured the syndication, right?
Yeah, it's a C round. So we can do public solicitation. The general investment is we ask for 4 shares at 25 each, so it's a $100,000 investment. I have about $450,000 left to raise, and what that would be for is the parking lot, painting, the landscaping, update the gates. Most of the internal turns have been done. The pool's been done. The chillers, that's also got a master meter chiller system. There's a little bit of maintenance on some of the units to do there to upgrade the units, not major. And so this one, you must be an accredited investor. to invest in, since it is public solicitation, so we cannot take non-accredited investors. So I don't know, the definition of that is you have to be net worth of over $1 million, not including your personal residence, and individual income of 200,000 or household of 300, and you can be accredited. And we have a third-party resource we use for that to verify.
Okay. Well, now what is returns? What are expected returns looking like?
It's going to be double digits. So we target on the floor of 14, and then it goes up from there. And historically, we've been more than that on our return. So the projected return on that's 14 to 18. It's kind of leave it a range because it's hard to know where the rents will push, the final financing and that, but north of 14 for the short term. And then once we go into the long term, buy and hold, we're going to switch the strategy up. And so there'd be a pref, probably a 6 pref paid out quarterly. And then as we maybe 3 to 5 years refinance, they get their capital out, which would cause their IRR to go up tremendously because they've got return of capital, but yet they still have the same percentage of ownership in the asset. And eventually I'd like to return all their capital and they still get a return, which is then infinite from there. So there's multiple ways for this to transact. But for the next 12 months, we're looking at about a 14 to 18% return.
Nice. And that's IRR, not cash on cash, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's IRR. So that's annualized. So that typically the one of the challenges we have when repositioning with some investors is there's 2 times there's a transaction. There's the day you fund it and the day you get your money back, and there's no cash flow in between. So for the next 12 months, there won't be any distributions, and the distributions will start in a year. And so a year from now. So that becomes a challenge for some investors. And if you need the quarterly or monthly payments, this type of investment's not for you, and that's okay.
Right. And that's the thing. Different deals for different investors and vice versa. We're actually working on a deal right now. It's a strict cash flow deal. Can't really discuss it at this point, but it's not going to be a big refi and huge reposition or anything else like that. It's a nice, stable, cash flowing deal, 96% occupied, runs great. It's going to just spit out money every month, and that's all it's going to do. That requires a very different type of investor as opposed to the stuff that what you just described is a heavy lift. It's going to be a reposition. It's going to be a big value add. That's a different type of investor, right? With a different type of return.
Well, oftentimes it's 24 to 36 months before they get any return on these ones that we buy. The good news, bad news is there's very few of those around anymore. So we have to reposition our company to find assets that are, like we had talked earlier, you can identify ones you can see on the street that have problems. Like, oh, this is a big problem. And then the management ones, until you get to know somebody or a situation, you don't know if there's problematic management. And those opportunities exist today where people are, like the property we're buying now in Tucson, there's zero cash flow, and he's owned it for a number of years, and he's struggling with that. And we feel we have a solution. We come in and cause positive cash flow on that property. So there is definitely different types of investors that have to be comfortable that there's might be 24 to 36 months sometimes to get paid, and that's a long time.
Yeah, it is. And I think that those investors that you have, that pool of investors is the same. I'm assuming the same investors you keep going to for every one of these deals, right?
Yes.
Same pool of investors. Yeah. Do you also work on finding new investors as you go? And how do you do that if you do?
Yeah, we're very active in going beyond friends and family. That's been a little more work or a lot more work getting beyond friends and family, their current network. So we're marketing on LinkedIn. We're marketing on other social media, Instagram, things like that to get the word out.
Okay, excellent. And I forgot to ask you, getting back to that deal, what does the deal breakdown look like in terms of equity split between the LP and the GP?
It's a 60-40, 60% to the limited partner, and then we get 40% after that. So 60-40 split.
Okay. So it sounds like it's also reflective of the asset and what needs to be done as well, right? It's like some people do an 80-20, some people do a 70-30. It just depends on what the asset is and what's going on with it in terms of how you're repositioning it, if anything.
Yeah, once we do the buy and hold, it's going to be very heavily towards the investor because we won't have as much work in the project anymore.
Yep.
Because of the amount of effort and work that goes into it. We get our fees, our acquisition fee, our management fees, and then the profit split on the back, and they still get a very solid double-digit return. There's times we've had to change that up to make the deal work. So every project is unique in that. But we typically target for the shorter under 2 years at 60-40. But the longer ones, it's going to be way more heavily towards the investor and less towards the operator, because the amount of effort month to month is a lot less. And we don't want to be greedy and take all the profits. So the shorter term ones, that's how we get paid. The longer term, we'll share in the cash flow.
So I know that you just mentioned trying to find deals right now. It's a tight market. It's tight market here in Cleveland. It's tight market where you're at too. I think it's the same way everywhere. Are you looking to maybe even leave your market, or are you going to try to stay put and continue growing in your local area?
Well, we went to Tucson 3 years ago because we couldn't find what we wanted to buy in Phoenix, and the market was tight. And now we look back that every property we looked at, we could have made a ton of money if we had bought it 3 years ago in Phoenix. But you don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. So we bought 10 assets in Tucson, and we've done well there. But again, there's very few, it's very limited opportunities. So we are branching out, and we're going to start with a group out of Texas where we want to partner. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that this group is somebody that we've vetted out, and we've got to know them really well over the last few years, known them for a number of years. And they're going to be the boots on the ground. The property level will be the asset level, and we'll share in the capital raise. So that's the type of partners. And we're looking in the Southwest, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Arizona. Keep it in the areas that we know and areas that are quick to get to in case of an emergency. We're not comfortable in the northern states, just not understanding, the heating and cooling is a lot different. It would take a strong partner up there for us to partner in the Midwest. So we will go that way, I'm sure, someday, but for now we're sticking in the South. And the culture, we understand the Southwest culture is very, very consistent across especially New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. Very, very similar culture.
Absolutely. The culture is everything. One of my partners lives down in Texas, and he's got assets up here in Ohio, down in Texas, down in where else? Louisiana. He's got assets in many different places, and by far, he does like the Ohio culture, but he does say the same sort of thing. The culture varies from area to area. So knowing your demographic and what they're looking for in a property is a really big deal, especially as you're marketing to them, as you're rebranding to that demographic. It's huge. It's everything.
No, it is. And we focus so heavily on the resident that creating a home. I feel that that's the most underserved part of multifamily. And I believe you share some of those same philosophies, that there's so many operators that mistreat the residents and don't realize that that's their customer. Simple math says somebody paying you $700 a month for 5 years is a $42,000 customer. And I don't know how many businesses will mistreat a $42,000 customer. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And that's a lot of money that you're getting in, and you treat them with so much disrespect. So we make sure that every resident is treated with the dignity they deserve. And that to us is very important. So we understand the culture here and the give and take of living in the Southwest. So that's primarily why we stuck it out here.
Yeah. But I think you're right, though, too. People seem to forget that, right? They treat the tenant like, some people anyway, not everyone, we don't, but they don't treat them very well, and like the slumlord you just mentioned a bit ago, right? In that property you guys acquired recently. So now, what do you think is the outlook for multifamily? That people keep talking about this recession on the horizon, and they've been saying that for the last 24 months. What are your general thoughts around it?
Well, if you research the last few recessions, not every one has been around real estate. Some recessions have come and not affected real estate. So it just depends on where the recession will be. The last one we had, which we're now calling the Great Recession, in quotes, was heavily in real estate, but not all of them have been. There was some earlier on that the real estate market was very stable and weathered just fine. The banks did just fine. Other business segments suffered. I think we're going to have a recession personally. Restaurants are so overbuilt, and it's such a big money thing right now, and the margins are slim, that we're going to see a restaurant recession probably. That's just my own personal opinion. I don't have any hard data. But if the people's income starts to go down, they're going to start cooking at home again. It's just reality says that people aren't going to go to the restaurant like they do, and they'll suffer. Does that mean that residential? Well, certain segments of it, but primarily I believe that we'll be able to weather this for the next 3 to 5 years in real estate, because the demand is high. Especially, I just read where Phoenix and Dallas, Fort Worth, the two fastest growing areas of the country right now. Now, areas on a micro sense, New York, Chicago, and LA have a declining population. So they're going to have their own challenges. But where we focus, there has been growing population in Tucson and Phoenix and Houston area, Albuquerque. They have a growing population and good infrastructure, so I believe that's going to continue.
Nice, excellent.
And the demand is there. And we're not overbuilding. The people are moving into areas, and most of the areas are not being overbuilt. It seems like a lot slower growth in the building than it was in the last cycle. So even if there is a recession, I believe that we'll be able to weather it pretty well in real estate.
Are you guys doing a lot of development out in your neck of the woods then?
We don't do any ourselves. I don't have the vision. I have a vision of taking something and creating something else out of it, but having bare land and seeing people build there, I marvel at that. And then I say, hey, that's a pretty good idea. And I take little bits of what they've done, put them into Class C, exposed pipes and indoor, outdoor, just different things that bring in this modern look, and people like it. But I'm not very good at coming up with the idea, but I'm good at borrowing the idea.
Right. No, hey, I do the same thing. But yeah, up here in Cleveland, there's a lot of development going on. A lot of that's Class A build outs that are taking place. So the key is absorption, right? Can we absorb all of these people that are moving into the area? So, but I know that you guys are experiencing a lot of new builds out there too, right?
Oh yeah, Class A downtown, repositioning on Roosevelt Row and just outside of east side of downtown Phoenix. It's incredible what they're doing there for multifamily, turning those warehouses and old derelict buildings into something pretty awesome.
Nice.
Been spending some time down there. I'm trying to borrow ideas on what we can do to our properties to make them stand out in workforce.
Excellent. All right, now what do you see the next 5 years looking like for your business?
We want to get to a buy and hold of 1,000 units in the next 3 to 5 years, where we have that under ownership in a long-term, permanent financing, if you will. And we see that across the Southwest, Arizona, like I mentioned, those states, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas primarily. A little bit in Nevada, Las Vegas area we've looked. I like Colorado, but not sure that the price points there meet what we're looking for. The margins are tighter. Denver's insanely expensive, so that's out of our wheelhouse.
Nice, excellent. All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Bruce, you can reach him via his company website at bakerson.com. Hope you got a lot of good insight on partnerships, on building a portfolio. It's just great stuff. Thank you for your time, Bruce. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Agostino. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to hearing from people through the podcast.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. For more free podcasts, articles, videos, and resources, go to www.bulletproofcashflow.com.